I see the destruction of empires as being much like a pot of water boiling over the course of time. Each reduction in volume adds to the heat, increasing the likelihood that it will spill. For Rome, the water level dropped because of a weakening population, corruption, incompetent leaders, a loss of purpose, and instability. In addition, the hot stove of pressures from without continued to increase the temperature. Before long, the pot boiled over and the Roman Empire in the West collapsed, giving way to the Middle Ages. It is said that the western half of the Roman Empire fell in the year 476 AD, when the Germanic chieftain Theodoric the Great deposed Romulus Augustus, the last Roman emperor in the West, and took his crown. But anyone who believes that Rome's downfall occurred in a single day is sorely mistaken. The fall of Rome was a gradual decline that spanned nearly 2 centuries. No single person was responsible for its demise. Rather, its destruction resulted from a convergence of factors that made the pot boil over. First, let's examine Rome's internal issues, the water that was draining from the pot. The first source of trouble was Rome's massive size. Its territory stretched from Britain to Egypt, covering over 5 million square kilometers. Maintaining such a large empire required a huge bureaucracy, a complex system of roads and supply lines, and a constant supply of soldiers to defend its borders. As the empire grew, these costs became increasingly burdensome, leading to higher taxes and decreased living standards. It got to the point that the Roman Emperor Diocletian divided the empire into 2 halves, hoping to make it easier to govern. But this only exacerbated the situation by turning brother against brother. Rome's vastness also contributed to the second source of trouble: poor governance. Because the Roman Empire was so large, communication between the center and the provinces took months. By the time a problem was identified and solutions were put into place, things had often gone from bad to worse. This slow response time meant that local governors had a lot of leeway in how they managed their provinces. Over time, they became more independent and less accountable to the central government, which increased tensions between the two and eventually led to outright rebellion. The third source of trouble was Rome's stagnating economy. During the Pax Romana, the economy thrived due to increased trade and stability. But after that, the economy entered a tailspin. The growth of slavery and the decline of overseas trade contributed to high unemployment and severe income inequality. To complicate matters, Rome debased its currency to pay for the army and the civil service, which led to hyperinflation and destroyed the economy. All the while, Rome continued to spend large sums on defense, worsening its financial situation. Another source of trouble was Rome's changing demographics. Unlike most civilizations, Rome's population peaked well after its decline. This was largely due to immigration. Refugees fleeing from the Goths and other Germanic peoples sought asylum within Rome's borders, putting a strain on the economy and contributing to social unrest. And then there was the issue of Christianity. As Christianity spread throughout the empire, it became more and more popular. Christians refused to participate in pagan rituals or serve in the military, which created tension with the state. This was especially true during times of war when Rome desperately needed all hands on deck. Additionally, Christian doctrine undermined Roman values and traditions. Christians were willing to sacrifice their lives for their beliefs, which both impressed and frightened the Romans. Finally, there was the matter of technology. Rome was a highly technological society for its time. Its roads, aqueducts, and public buildings were marvels of engineering. But after the Pax Romana, innovation slowed dramatically. Other civilizations, such as the Chinese and Indians, continued to advance technologically, but Rome failed to keep up. This lack of innovation left Rome vulnerable to the technological advancements of its enemies. These were the internal sources of trouble, the water draining from the pot. But there were also external forces pressing down on Rome, making the water boil faster. The first was the pressure from nomadic groups. For centuries, Rome had kept nomadic groups from Europe by paying them to stay away. But as Rome's economy declined, it could no longer afford to pay the nomads, who then began to raid Roman territory. To make matters worse, Rome's traditional allies in the east, such as the Parthians and Sassanids, became enemies. This put even more pressure on Rome's already overstretched military. The Goths alone launched 3 major invasions into the Balkans, causing massive devastation. To fend off these attacks, Rome needed a strong military, but this proved difficult. Rome's recruitment pool was shrinking, and the army was becoming increasingly dependent on foreign mercenaries. These mercenaries were often poorly trained and had little loyalty to Rome, and the decline in technological advancement meant that Rome's military tactics and weapons were no match for its enemies. As the external pressures mounted, Rome's territory began to shrink. First, it lost control of Britain, then it lost North Africa. Before long, it lost Gaul as well. Without these territories, Rome's tax base shrank even further, making it even harder to defend its borders. In the end, Rome fell because of a combination of internal weaknesses and external pressures. Its size, governance, economy, population, religion, and technology were not suited to the realities of the 3rd and 4th centuries. At the same time, it faced pressure from nomadic groups and former allies who were eager to carve out a piece of the declining empire. Eventually, the pot boiled over and Rome fell. After the deposition of Romulus Augustus, the Germanic chieftains established several kingdoms in Western Europe. The Visigoths under Alaric settled in what is now southern France. The Ostrogoths under Theodoric the Great settled in Italy. The Vandals under Gunderic settled in North Africa. And the Franks under Clovis settled in northern France. In the east, the Roman Empire continued for another 1,000 years. Today, the Eastern Orthodox Church claims to be the true successor of the Roman Empire, and it is certainly possible that this claim will continue to be debated for another 1,000 years. So what can we learn from the fall of Rome? One lesson is that no empire lasts forever. Rome was once the most powerful civilization in the world, but today, it is nothing but a footnote in history. Another lesson is that even the greatest empires are vulnerable to the forces of economics and human nature. Rome's decline was caused by a combination of factors, not just a single catastrophic event. Finally, the fall of Rome shows that history is always moving forward. There are no second chances. Once the pot boils over, there is no going back. Today, we live in a globalized world that seems to be held together by a thin veneer of prosperity and security. But history shows us that even the greatest empires eventually fall. We must remember the lessons of Rome if we want to avoid the mistakes that led to its downfall. Now, I have a question for you. What do you think is the most important lesson that we can learn from the fall of Rome? Let me know in the comments below. Now, let's take a look at the timeline of the fall of the Roman Empire. 27 BC, Augustus becomes the first emperor of Rome. 96, 180 AD. The Pax Romana, a period of peace and prosperity throughout the empire. 180, 235 AD, the crisis of the 3rd century, a period of instability and economic decline. 235, 284 AD, more than 50 emperors rule the empire, many of them for just days or weeks. 284, 305 AD, Diocletian divides the empire into 2 halves, east and west. 313 AD, Constantine legalizes Christianity. 325 AD, the Council of Nicaea, which defined the core doctrines of Christianity. 376 AD, the Visigoths invade the Balkans. 410 AD, the Visigoths sack Rome. 455 AD, the Vandals sack Rome. 476 AD, Romulus Augustulus, the last Roman emperor in the West, is deposed by the Germanic chieftain Theodoric the Great. Now let's take a look at some of the key figures in the fall of Rome. Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, who ushered in the Pax Romana. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor whose reign marked the end of the Pax Romana. Diocletian, the emperor who divided the empire into 2 halves in an attempt to make it easier to govern. Constantine, the emperor who legalized Christianity. Romulus Augustulus, the last Roman emperor in the West. Theodoric the Great, the Germanic chieftain who deposed Romulus Augustulus and established the Ostrogothic kingdom in Italy. Alaric, the leader of the Visigoths who sacked Rome in 410 AD. Gunderic, the leader of the Vandals who sacked Rome in 455 AD. Clovis, the leader of the Franks who established the Frankish kingdom in northern France. Now it's time for you to make your voice heard. What do you think is the most important lesson that we can learn from the fall of Rome? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.